So in order to do this, I will open up a new terminal. And again, this is our normal terminal here, just in my IDE. And I will use the ng command again. So I'll navigate into my project folder. And then with ng generate, I can generate a new piece, so to say, of my application. For example, component. Later you will learn about different things you can create, you might use in your Angular 2 app. So I will create a component by using ng generate component. And then I give this component a name, and I will name my, let's say, other. Basically, other component will be the name at the end. Other, and then hit enter. Now this will create a couple of new files, and it will create a new folder too. As you see, it created this other folder. Now in this folder, you again find the same files you saw before. I'll get rid of this testing file. Then I got my HTML file, which just says other works, an empty styling file, of which I will get rid here because I won't need it right now. And I will get rid of the style URLs in my component itself in the TS file. This ng on init thing isn't important right now. You will learn about on init and lifecycle hooks, what that is in the end, later. I'll also get rid of the constructor for now and of that import here. So now we got, well, pretty empty file. As you can see, the selector was automatically set to FA other. That is because when creating this project, I added the prefix flag to the Angular CLI and set the prefix to FA, which makes sure that it prefixes all my selectors with this FA dash thing. Now, why is that important? Well, think about the importance of the selector. Angular 2 will replace everything that matches this selector with this component. Imagine you made a mistake and were to set the selector to article. Now, article is a default HTML element, and that probably wouldn't be that good. Now, let's say you don't make that mistake, but you name it Angular sidebar. Now, that certainly isn't a default HTML tag, right? Right? But what if you were to add another third-party library, and that library were to use the exact same tag? Now you would have problems again. So in order to make sure that you're not interfering with default HTML tags or third-party libraries, the solution is to make unique selectors. And a very good practice to make sure that your selectors are unique is to pick clear prefixes. This might be the abbreviation of your company name, the abbreviation of your project, of your first name, if that makes sense, whatever, but pick something which makes this selector unique, and then follow it by the name of this component. So other in this case, since I named this other component. So this is the file which was set up for me. And now I want to use this FA other selector. I want to use this component in my app component. So I'll get rid of another line and I'll add FA other. Should work, right? I'm using this other selector, FA other, which is the selector set up here. So if I save this and have a look at my project, I can't see it. Do you see it? We should see other works, right? But I don't see it. The reason is the component, first app component, doesn't know what FA other is. Like the index HTML file wouldn't know what first app is if we would not tell it. And where do we tell it? In this bootstrap file, where we tell Angular 2 start this application and start it with first app component. Now this will tell Angular 2, oh, okay, now I'm aware of this first app component. So I'll have a look at this. I see that it has the selector first app. And now when I go over this file and find first app here, I know that this refers to this component. Now we're not doing the same in this first app component. We have FA other, but we're nowhere telling Angular 2 that this is a component, that it should look at a component. And it doesn't by default scan all our components, which is a good thing. So how could we tell Angular 2? Well, we're not doing that in the bootstrap method because our application is already running. The place to tell it is inside this first app component here. because here is the template where we're using this component. Now remember that I told you that components are directives, instructions in the code telling Angular 2 what to do. So we're using such a directive in the template of this first app component. In order to tell Angular 2 that this is a directive, or put in other words, in order to let Angular 2 know which directives we want to use in this template, I add another metadata to this component's decorator. The directives metadata, which takes an array as a value. Now this array just has a couple of references to the types of directives we want to use in this component's template. And here, of course, we only want to use one type or one reference, and this is the other component. So I will add other component here. Now this still won't work, and I could auto import it here with my IDE, but I'll do that by hand. I'll import something from the other folder. Now the something I want to import is the other component. And by the way, one of the style guide rules is to have an empty white space before and after your import module names here. So now this works. And I'm importing that from other and not from other/other component, which would work too, by the way. Now I'm importing it from this other component file. Without that, I'm just importing it from other, and this will default to this index.ts file. And in this file, I'm exporting this other component. Now that might look a bit complicated, because why would I have an extra file for that? Well, the reason is just if I add multiple components or things in general, modules, I want to export in this other folder, I would group them all in the index.ts file here, a concept called barrels, which allows me to organize my imports like that, just indicating or referring to this other folder and not to the individual files. This makes for shorter import statements, saves code, and makes it more readable, and is a good practice you should follow when writing Angular 2 applications. But the thing with the barrels was just a side note. The important thing here is, of course, that now I let Angular 2 know that I'm using the other component as a directive in this template here. And now Angular 2 will be able to identify this FA other selector. Therefore, you see other works now if you reload your page, or if you save it, it is reloaded automatically. So with this, we're now using another component in our first component. So we're nesting components. We're having this root component, which gets started by the bootstrap method, and which then holds our new component, FA other, or the other component, inside of it.